to be you. I wonder finally how. Faded down the wrong. The musical fading is a major mental block for me, Charles.
That's right.
I apologize.
That's
now,
right.
Charles, welcome to Sunday.
It's great to be back with you.
Lovely to see you. I've made a little bit of an upgrade to the show today. We've got, I think your fans will admire the new close-up shot we have of you, Charles.
Well, it's, as I said earlier, it's 2 ways to break the camera.
But now we can, because it was sometimes distracting to have the TV partially in the shot, and I think it's nice to have some options for what we can cut around to.
Well, appreciate the upgrades.
It's been quite a week, Charles. All that testifying by Peter Strzok, or I should say lying by Peter Strzok. There's quite a bit to go into. Why don't we just get right underway?
Sure. Well, first the art department,
yes.
it's I'm not a baseball expert, but to be able to have a hit every at bat, I mean, it's just amazing. And these are just singles. These are triples, home runs, grand slam home runs, and we will promise the audience in advance that famous scene from when Harry Met Sally. We're not going to try to replicate that scene.
No.
Don't think about that scene, especially as it may involve these two people, because that probably didn't happen. But
well, thank you. I always appreciate the compliments, and I'm trying to make it fun for everybody. Have a little imagery there that everyone can enjoy. So that's obviously based on the classic comedy When Harry Met Sally. But of course, President Trump has dropped the Hillary and just taken to calling her crooked.
Right, which I think is apt. But what today we wanted to do is to get a little bit into the long-standing pattern and practices that have animated this supposed family now for 40 years or more. That what we're talking about here, we have, some might say we're a little obsessive in that this I think is more than our 80th different 2-hour video on the subject, but this is such a massive scandal that to get to understand it, you really have, I guess this will be our 87th, to understand it, you've got to look at it from many perspectives, and to see that this is not simply an honest set of mistakes or just technical fouls. No, this is a long-standing pattern and practice. It is a conspiracy to subvert the existing system. And when you get into the people who are leading this conspiracy, and that would be Bill, I think primarily, Hillary second, and Bruce Lindsay and others, when you get into this conspiracy, you take it right the way back to the formative years. Now, we can't do that easily for Bill back in Arkansas, but you take it back to college days and Rhodes Scholar days and all that stuff. You see in both of these people who are prone to weaving conspiracies, and indeed now to leading conspiracies to criminal ends.
Yeah. It's a vast left-wing conspiracy. And, I do apologize, Charles. I forgot to give some of the introductory information that I like to give for people who are just joining us. We're over 62,000 subscribers on YouTube now, Charles. So if anyone's watching who isn't following you on Twitter, of course, they can find you at Charles Ortel, and there's a load of information on charlesortel.com, and they can follow Crowdsource the Truth on Twitter at CS the Truth. And that's a great way to keep up with all the latest developments that may be happening.
Good. Well, if we could go into the first slide, that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you go over the details, and these two have been the subject of I don't know how many book treatments, I don't know how many magazines and videos and newspaper stories, whatever. But beyond that, they have been the subject of numerous criminal inquiries. FBI investigations, congressional investigations, lawsuits, you name it. So the public record that's out there on these two that you could easily get without the FBI or without a vaunted investigative team is gargantuan. The other thing that's interesting is that, unlike people who use their real names for things all the time, these people love to use aliases, fake
Really?
email accounts, fake names for their companies.
Huh.
And so unless you've got the kind of time that people like you and I have to really consider all these angles, you're not gonna fathom the degree to which these two are the modern Bonnie and Clyde of politics and charity. I mean,
We've used Bonnie and
I
Clyde
know.
in the past. It's funny, Charles, these fake names, these aliases, I know some other people who do that as well. It seems like they're really all playing by a rule book.
Right, it's a conceit that, you could go and say, well, we're now in a globalist world, and so these laws that were put together in that pesky old Constitution, that was before there were the internets that Al Gore invented.
Right.
These national laws, they really don't apply to we globalist social justice, warriors, and there are all these evil Republicans who are out to get us, and so we have to protect ourselves. We have to use these aliases. Rubbish. When it comes to, and we've been focusing mostly, you and I, on this, on charity land. When you operate a charity, you are not allowed to engage in any illegal activities, and when you solicit money, you can only do it in your registered names.
Well, I mean, of course, no one is allowed to engage in illegal activities. That's why they're illegal.
Well, I know, but we will have a link in a few moments actually, to this memo that I found to be a real oddity. That the team at the IRS actually wrote a long memo about why 501c3 charities cannot engage in illegal activities. It's like, why did you need to write the memo?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it kind of obvious?
Yeah, it's stupid.
They've done it. And so another point here that I'm trying to make actually in a friendly manner to many of, and I do have quite a few acquaintances who are on the other team, or I think the wrong team, which is to continue to follow the loony bin wing of the Democratic Party. Only a complete idiot at this stage, only a complete idiot would part with serious money sending in the direction of these fraudsters. Because you don't need to listen to any more of this broadcast. Just take away one thing. There are many, many active investigations. These have been confirmed now for many investigations. Many U.S. attorneys likely are on this. The FBI is on this. The IRS is on this. The Postal Service is on this. International governments are on this. Why, if you're rich, would you at this stage want to send money to people who claim to be worth a couple $100 million or more? So why do they need your money to begin with? People who are never going to reoccupy the White House, ever.
But Hillary's going to run again, they're saying.
She's never going to occupy the White House. I mean, the only White House she's going to occupy is if that house in Chappaqua, Washington, D.C. is painted white. Then they might occupy a White House, but not 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So, I mean, you're not buying yourself favor with that. And by the time Donald Trump and his team and and we all get done dismantling this globalist apparatus, the last thing you want to be is Secretary General of what remains of the disunited nations. I mean, there's no point in going down that path. So we're going to take you through today some additional meat on what's really going on here, what's actually happening, and give you some comfort that a day of reckoning approaches here. And the out date, in my opinion, for when this whole Clinton charity fraud comes crashing down is November 15th, 2018. That's the out date.
How did you arrive at that date?
Because that's a date by when the absolute final deadline for their filing their tax return for 2017, and there's no way to file this tax return without confessing to fraud. I mean, you don't have an option not to file.
I bet you they have a way.
No. This is different because we're going to get into some of the details of it. Because there has been a changing of the guard at the IRS. There is an understanding across the United States and around the world that Rod Rosenstein and Mueller and the remnants of the Obama, Bush, Clinton era that are still trying to occupy the Treasury and the Justice Department. These people are on the run. They are not going to be able to defend their actions any longer. Congress is wise to them. The American people is wise to them. Our viewership's wise. And people are getting angry and engaged in this process. It is unfair to have a two-tier system of justice where the meat of humanity, who pays all the taxes, plays by the rules, and the brigands, who get involved in politics, pretending that they're doing something useful. No, they don't play by the rules at all. They, you know, if they're guilty of sin, they run for president, and then they can't be attacked, because if you attack them, it's being political. People don't buy that anymore.
Right.
And so you have to file your tax returns as a charity by November 15th, 2018 for 2017. When you have a material adverse development, as has already happened with the Clintons, you have to, within 30 days, and 15 in some states, file reports to the state regulators explaining what happened. And they haven't done that. There's a thicket of problems for them in the United States. There's an even bigger jungle of problems for them around the world. and that's before you get to the place of actually trying to get the last remaining stupid accounting firm in the world to sign up for the mission of putting their neck in a noose and filing tax returns for this fraud. I mean, this isn't a case now where you can say, well, you know, I'm Price Waterhouse and I didn't see any of this, or I'm Arthur. No, there is no Arthur Anderson.
BKD.
BKD may not be around. It's maybe DEAD before too long. But you just there's too much information out there in the public domain, and people are beginning to get serious under this Trump administration about actually enforcing laws even-handedly. If you'll notice, there have been a lot of announcements in the press almost on a weekly, daily basis about the Trump administration, Justice Department putting this fraudster away and that fraudster away and this crooked kingpin away. There's a new attitude in town, in Washington, D.C., and it's taking, there's a new sheriff in town, and it's taken a while, and the people who have been involved in this fraud for so long, for decades, have been resist, fight. But Donald Trump is this unusual force, and he seems to be winning, and I'm not sick and tired of it yet.
Not tired of winning.
I'm not tired of it.
Good, that's great.
So if we go to the next page, we'll breeze through this standard introduction, but I do like to make it clear to our viewers every time we do one of these. I have had some anxious viewers contact me by email and say, you know, how can you say this kind of stuff? Well, what we're saying is grounded in fact, and we provide the evidence to you. It's the mainstream media, the corporate-owned media, it's really both political parties, it's the crooked academics, the brand name crooked academics and think tankers. They're not telling you the truth about what's been going on with this mammoth fraud, because they're all part of it.
Right.
You know, this unregulated globalism is great for the elite universities. It's great for corporate-owned media. It's great for academics who want to fly around the world and get, you know, children of the rich dictators to go to Harvard, Yale, et cetera, and get gigantic contributions into those places. It's great for them to get their projects and book deals and their movie deals and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to show you just how badly globalism is screwing you in nations across, in the richest nations, the poorest nations. The only people who may arguably be benefiting, the large number of people who may potentially be benefiting from this globalist project are in India and China. And there it's not even clear that all the benefit isn't going to the elites in those two countries. But we're going to get into that in a bit. So just taking you through, we like to begin each week taking you through what happened, what we consider to be the most salient points of the past week. The first thing, if we could hit this Axios link, this is hysterical. I used to think that Axios was sort of amusing, and I think they're now, I mean, these people are, you know, they're graduates of the Dumas University. You know how to spell the Dumas University?
It's pronounced dumbass.
There you go.
Dumas.
So, I mean, this is Axios, and this is the founder, I think, Jim Vandehei, I think, is one of the founders of Axios, which used to be, I think he also founded Politico. And they're trying to, you know, say that this trip of Trump's, first to Brussels, then to the UK, to Scotland, and now in Helsinki, is just, you know, spoiled brat, you know, creating mayhem around the world. No, that's not what he's doing. I mean, when you look, business people like Donald Trump, and he's a skilled business person, they're quick at seeing the essence of the problem and the glimmer of the opportunity. The essence of the problem with NATO is, hello, World War II is over. Like it ended kind of 73 years ago?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are many people who don't live to be 73 years old.
Right.
And this war is still over 73 years ago. Hello, the Soviet Union? That blew up in 1992. So what is it that we are trying to do with NATO? It's not that we don't...
weapons?
Well, probably, but it's not like we dislike Europe, although Trump just got through saying in an interview that happened, I think it was broadcast hours ago, that our greatest foe, America's greatest foe now, in Trump's view, is Europe, which I thought was an interesting thing to say. That's going to have, the people, when the people in Europe get back from their 8-week vacation in September, their heads are going to explode. but the point is, America, we have many allies across the planet. With or without Donald Trump, there are deep, lasting ties, long-standing ties that go, well before I was born and you were born, Jason, and will continue long after we're both gone. But the simple fact of the matter is, NATO, when you look at the facts and you ask, how does NATO benefit the average American?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Right.
Okay, it simply doesn't. If it's such a noble purpose to go ahead and have all these nations get together and band together and agree to protect one another and all that, why is America paying so much of the bill? And why are the rich nations who could pay their way either not paying, or if they are paying, saying they're spending it on defense and in reality spending it on social experimentation? I mean, you've got certainly these countries that are, quote, spending money on defense that have, armies that don't work, aged soldier bases. It's time, if it's such a threat, if we're setting up NATO to face down Russia, okay, if it's such a serious threat, why are you buying all your energy, Germany, from Russia?
Yeah, all they got to do is shut off the natural gas spigot.
And why is a former leader of Germany, a very active member of this company that's getting all the money, the Russian company that's getting all the money from German people? I mean,
Gazprom?
It's not Gazprom, I think it's a different one, Rosneft maybe. I forget which one it is, but it's one of Gerhard Schroeder is the guy's name. So I think, yes, of course, the summiteers, the Davos men and women, the people who love, going to fancy catered dinners across Europe, they love NATO. I mean, it's a one big excuse for party after party, and they don't have to pay anything for it. But I mean, that's got to change. And we can't have a defense pact where America foots the bill and a trade regime where our partners in NATO decide to freeze American goods out, not necessarily by tariffs, but by tricks and non-tariff barriers. And let's go to an open system of trade. We'll take our tariffs off, you take your tariffs off. We'll go, person on, I was going to say mano a mano, but that might be too sexist. We'll go.
Doesn't
human,
that just mean hand to hand?
Whatever. Yeah, I guess it does. Now that I think about hand to hand, but. But seriously, I mean, Donald Trump is, I think, doing good work. He gave him a warning last year. I love the way he walked in this billion-dollar new headquarters and he said, I promise I'm not going to bring up the cost of the building. And of course, that was fresh on everybody's mind, and he didn't have to. And he could honestly say, I didn't bring it up.
Well, I mean, by saying I'm not going to bring it up, isn't it sort of the first thing that he's doing? It's a trick that reminds me of somebody else I know.
I wonder who that would be.
Yeah.
So then if you go, then you have the other pundits. This is our friend, this Gateway pundit one, is our friend Ted Malloch.
Yes.
Who, thank you, Ted, for being on the show, and thank you for your hard work. But, again, he's driven a bulldozer through the United Kingdom, as well he should. I mean, really what you have in the UK, what you've I remember in business school, we had many cases on, we had a course called BGIE, which we Business, Government, and the International Economy, and we would call it Biggie. And there were England back in '78 was a disaster. The United Kingdom was really reeling with failed socialist experiments. The economy was chiefly socialized, massive deficits, weak pound, gigantic debt, union strife, you name it. And the problem in England, the economic problem in England has long been that for the South, since the 16th century, the South has been where the wealth is, and the North has been crumbling. It was reversed prior to when brief digression, when King Henry VIII basically gave a whole bunch of monasteries to his friends that had been up in the North. And these monasteries were real estate projects that actually generated a lot of income. So he changed the whole distribution of wealth when he assumed power and split with Rome. But the structural problem in England, as I say, is the wealth is in the South. London is a wealthy city, London is a globalist capital. London is a banking and financial capital. London is a place filled with globalist schemers, as we see from Downer and his group, Hackett. What's the one that
Black Cube?
Black Cube, I think it's more, isn't that more Israeli? But
it's in London.
Is it in London? But what's the one that Steele was involved with? Christopher Steele.
Fusion GPS.
Was it Fusion GPS? I thought he was also involved with the UK. Well, anyway, there are a whole bunch of these loosely, if not completely unregulated organizations that provide shadow.
Hut? Is that
Wackenhut's, I think, down in Florida, but Hackett is one, and it's a place where if you want to play, I don't want to be impolite and say as a criminal. I'll go a step short of that and just say, if you want to play in the gray zone, not in where on the playing field, but let's say around it, sort of in the rules or whatever.
Swindles.
Exactly, frauds and swindles. England, UK is a great place to consider doing that because it doesn't have the regulatory firepower to really police these multinational globalist schemes.
Wow.
And it is a place where it's much closer to a lot of these places, let's just say, these nations, where there is unlocked resource wealth and the potential to do all kinds of crooked deals. So it's a civilized, in theory, place where you can get your crooked deals done. And Trump has just gone and said, no, wait a minute. I don't think he's laid the biggest bomb out there. We're going to get to that a little bit, but it is possible. Judge Andrew Napolitano started on this track. It is possible that among the many nations that were involved spying on Americans illegally at the behest and in the coordination with the Obama administration, one of the most likely in my mind is the United Kingdom. And Napolitano made that accusation. He was bounced off Fox for a little while for doing so. I think he was right, and I think Trump knows a lot more, and his team knows a lot more about what truly did happen in the whole election, and I think Trump is going to get his pound of flesh here.
Pound sterling.
Exactly. His pound sterling of flesh.
Now, Charles, just the other day I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Bill Binney. And Bill went as far as saying that GCHQ and the NSA are essentially one and the same, that they are just, rebranded so that specifically when the United States needs to spy on someone, they can use GCHQ, and when England needs to spy on someone, they can use the NSA, and they avoid all these as you've said, pesky laws. So it was very interesting to hear Bill Binney say that. Of course, he was in the NSA for 32 years, became a whistleblower, and he describes a pretty dark and troubling security agency. Yeah,
well, Bill Binney is a true patriot, not just an American patriot. I'd say he's a nationalist, a human patriot. Yeah. He's gone through hell. Yeah. So my hat is off to him. It's fantastic that you got to interview him, that he gave you the time, that you made the time for him. He deserves the support of the Crowdsource the Truth viewership, and I don't know if he has any kind of GoFundMe account or something like that, but
he didn't want any money. I asked him about that specifically, and he said that he doesn't have anything.
Wow.
Yeah,
I know. An amazing man. But so if we could just go back into the slides quickly, if that's all right. So
sorry, I didn't.
There's a lot I'm trying to do here.
Get distracted there.
It's okay.
Oop. What's going on? It takes a second after.
No worries. Here we go. Now, this Theresa May, and I'm sorry to say, no, it's not that one. No.
This one? No.
You had it there for a second. It's this one here.
Zero Hedge. Mouse is all over the place today. Sorry, Charles. There
we
go.
So, to take a line, which I hate to take out of Crooked's mouth, I am sick and tired, as she would like to say, of people who think that it is our duty as Americans to listen to the advice of any European or any English person with a funny accent has every right to lecture we Americans about how America should do its work. But when Donald Trump dares to give, frankly, an extremely weak leader in Theresa May, who was voted against Brexit, who was a Remainer, not a Brexiteer, when he has the nerve to give Theresa May advice, in confidence, what does she do? She goes on television and talks about it.
Oh.
This silly Andrew Marr BBC show. And it's like the inside, of course she waits until Trump has left the UK and he's in Scotland, and she's sort of chuckling, oh, that's silly Donald, he doesn't get it, blah, blah, blah. I didn't follow his advice, of course I'm going to do, because I'm so successful. I think Theresa May will be lucky to collect, I don't know if she gets a government pension or not, but she will be lucky to finish out this year as Prime Minister of England. She'll be lucky to finish the summer as Prime Minister, the way she's going. Yeah, I think, the direction that we are going in this country, welcoming business, welcoming capital, reducing regulation, fixing the mess, getting rid of the bureaucracies, exposing the fraudsters, is a direction that is going to expose lots of powerful people in the UK. And trying to fight this tornado, the Trump tornado.
Trump-NATO?
The Trump-NATO.
Anti-NATO Trump-NATO.
On a diet of Scotch eggs and whatever else they eat in the UK these days. Have you ever seen those Scotch eggs?
No.
Oh my God.
Was it like an egg soaked in Scotch?
It looks like camel balls. It's just
okay.
It's gross.
I digress, but I did a movie in Montana one time, and they had billboards advertising the Testicle Festival.
Oh, man.
Rocky Mountain oysters.
Thank you. So this, it's funny, I was talking with somebody who likes to remain nameless, and so he will, I'm just saying this for his benefit, so if he's listening. But in the morning on Friday, we were talking about, as we talk most days, we were talking about what could happen. And we were very optimistic, and I was, I got lucky. We were talking, about what happened. But, and I said to this person, I said, just be really careful. Trump is going to be over there in Europe. He's going to have the weekend. He's going to be in the UK. It's a perfect time for Mueller and his team to put a cloud over the whole process. And I didn't know about the indictment, obviously, before it happened. But this indictment, to me, reeks to high heaven. It reeks to high heaven. It's very, if you're going to go for an indictment, let's think about this. You're going for an indictment against 12 Russians, okay? 12 Russians. But you're not going to go against Hillary Clinton and Abedin, right? In this one, you're going to go against 12 non-resident, non-citizens in Russia at a moment where we don't really have very good relations with Russia, and we can fully expect
no extradition, right?
Right, we're not going to be able to go in there and get them, and they're certainly not going to send these people in to face justice. You're going to do this, right, because you found a reasonable prosecutor who believes that you can win a criminal case against this gang of 12, but you're, back in history, you're going to spend 4 years on the Clinton Foundation, 2001, 2005, and not bring an indictment. You're going to spend 2 years, 2 years now, I guess it is, 3 years, on the Hillary Clinton mishandling classified information. And not only are you not going to get any indictments, you're going to enter into secrecy and immunity agreements and let people destroy evidence, maybe even, who knows, help people destroy evidence. But then you're going to do this, and you're going to choose to announce it, right before Donald Trump, or right as he's meeting with the Queen of England, right before he's going up to Scotland, right before he sits down with Vladimir Putin, and you're going to try to tell me that this isn't, utter bullshit.
Yeah.
This to me, people are trying to put lipstick on the pig here and say that actually, this is helpful. Rosenstein was trying to help Donald Trump by doing this. This now gives Donald Trump more flexibility. These are people who are, the night at like 9:30 on election night were saying in 2016, well, there's a blue wall, Donald Trump would never win, Wisconsin, he's not going to win. These are the same people. I mean, this to me is proof positive that this is not a witch hunt. It is a waste. It's an egregious obstruction of justice. It's a chilling exercise designed to intimidate those outside government, those who don't have the resources, those who don't have the prosecutorial discretion, those who are not connected into the... It's trying to chill people from getting to the real truth here. And this, we got to go, once we get done with this, we got to go right back to the very beginning and understand exactly how Rod Rosenstein managed to hold on to his job, how he managed to go from being a U.S. attorney in Baltimore, seated in Baltimore, covering, I think, some part of Maryland, how he was selected to be the Deputy Attorney General, and who made that call, who endorsed him, what kind of checks did they do on him, and more importantly on his wife. Same questions for Sessions. There's a big story here. This does not seem to me to be a straightforward case of honest public servant, never manages to do anything wrong. If there's a problem, a serious problem in the last 20 years involving the Clintons, Rod Rosenstein and James Comey and Bob Mueller
were hovering around it.
Were centrally involved in it.
Yeah.
Giving the Clintons cover. Why do these people, one way or another, have a hunting license to go after a president who's now been in office for 1.5 years and has done more in 1.5 years, more good things in 1.5 years than George H.W., Bill Clinton, George W., and Barack Obama did in 28 years.
Well, those guys you just described have basically destroyed the country, so that's not too terribly difficult to do. As long as they didn't drop a bomb in the middle of New York City, they're doing a better job. Charles, there's something screwy going on in that U.S. Attorney's office. I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and I went to see Michael Mirando, who is the U.S. Attorney. First of all, I know you don't have time to watch all the shows I do with Quinn Michaels, but do you know how many U.S. attorneys there are in the whole country?
I think there are 93.
Correct, 93. I find that very strange. 93 is a number that held great significance to the Luciferian, Satanistic, occult leader, Aleister Crowley, and he created this 93 society that Quinn Michaels and I have been researching. So it's strange to see the frequent occurrence of that number, 93. But that's not why I say something screwy going on. I've tried to speak to Michael Mirando to learn more about this plea deal that was made with Imran Awan, and he hung up on me on the phone when I called there. I went and sat in their office for an hour, and he never answered the phone, never came down, tried to see him. I don't know what's going on at that U.S. Attorney's office.
Well, the problem is that there still, I believe, are holdover U.S. attorneys, and if there aren't holdover U.S. attorneys, there are vacant spots. There are deputies who are allied to the swamp. And
Debbie Wasserman's brother.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother, exactly. So Donald Trump, we don't need to go to this link because I'm mindful of the time, but Donald Trump is absolutely correct to criticize. People say, look at this indictment, it shows all this activity. And Donald Trump would say, yeah, when I wasn't president of the United States, when Barack Obama was president of the United States. I mean, explain to me, please, corporate media, explain to me why nothing was done about this. Why didn't the FBI insist? If they're going to raid Manafort's home 5 o'clock in the morning and take everything, why didn't they raid the DNC and take the server and check at the time? Not, because we know these people are good at bleach bidding. That's their sport, bleach bidding.
They don't want to cut into their texting and having sex with each other schedule.
Yeah, I know, but I mean when they could have done that in the April timeframe in 2016, and they didn't do it. And why didn't they insist? The very time they're exonerating, drafting exonerating letters for Hillary Clinton, they have this thing happen at one political party's headquarters. And by the way, it turns out the Russians may also have been trying to hack into, or elements of the Russians may also have been trying to hack against Jill Stein, against...
Why would they bother hacking Jill Stein?
Who knows? just for the hell of it.
Get her yoga routines.
Yeah, and the Republicans, et cetera. I mean, why didn't the Obama administration do a lot more about this? And why did Barack Obama himself, when they were worried that Donald Trump was going to allege if he lost, when it looked like Hillary might win, that 60-second period during the campaign,
right?
That around October timeframe, when the thing was to push Donald Trump on would he actually accept defeat graciously, Barack Obama and Donald Trump was complaining about certain aspects. Barack Obama got up there and said it's preposterous to think that the Russians could meddle in the election.
But he changed his mind, apparently. I mean, the FBI didn't investigate because they have these convenient cutout companies owned by their former employees like CrowdStrike, and they can just have them investigate, which, what the hell is the precedent for some private firm that isn't the FBI investigating something of this level? It really seems absurd on the face of it if you think about it for more than a second.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I think
ex-FBI started this company.
Again, I think part of the reason could be that Congress sets up rules and presidents pass laws, and suddenly the FBI is constricted to what it can't do. So rather than fight that, they just give money or work with these organizations, these contractors.
Oh, I think it's far more sinister than that. I think guys like Sean Henry spend years in the FBI. They understand what they can and cannot do as the FBI, and they see these loopholes and they go through them by starting these contract companies. Bill Binney said these contractors were like the beginning of the end of the whole entire country because they don't want to solve a problem. They just want to put a Band-Aid on it because if they solve it, their contract goes away.
Right, which we got to stop that. I mean, that has got to stop. I mean, here people, we're beginning to see in New York State, people are going to see the impact of these taking away these deductions for state and local taxes and property taxes in these Democrat-controlled states with high taxes. The tax burden in this country is too high, in part because of this kind of thing that you're talking about, that bureaucrats will have the ability to waste tens of billions of dollars altogether in just this type of behavior, and it's got to stop.
Well, and if you take this concept to the ultimate end, we see things like the Las Vegas shooting. We still don't have answers on that, and is it outside the realm of conception to think that a terrorist act could be staged so that whoever it is needs more money for private security, for FBI counterterrorism, whatever it is?
I certainly hope that isn't the case, but
I think we have reason to believe it might.
Yeah. And then, so again, you don't need to take up this link, but because this is somebody that you don't particularly like.
Oh, we should look at that for sure.
You do? Okay. But apparently, here's Kim.com claiming, and we don't know how believable he is, he may not be believable, that he was warned not to give his evidence to Mueller.
It's just so strange to me, Charles, how stuff about certain people seems to come around all at the same time. I mean, we've got this indictment coming out. We've got this weird press conference about Seth Rich. We've got now Kim.com talking about his evidence that he's been talking about for 2 years. Like, what the hell? Where is this evidence if he was so interested in doing the right thing?
Well, to me, what's that phrase? Is it Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is the most sensible. I mean, you look at this and you say, all right, on the one hand, you've got, Bernie Sanders, and I know that you liked Bernie Sanders. I thought he was amusing.
I did at the time.
Yeah, I thought it was amusing. I mean, his economic ideas were preposterous, but I admired his energy. I admired the following that he was able to put together. It was some drama. It's a lot more believable to me that the Berniacs, particularly those who may have been, in the DNC one way or another, watched the way in which the Clintons were tilting the scales in favor of Hillary Clinton and against Bernie. And at a certain point, they said, this is just rubbish. We're not going to put up with this anymore. We're sick of this. We're certainly not going to side with Hillary. So, let's get this over to somebody who will expose it to the public. It's a lot more logical to me that it came out that way than some foreign government intervened to get it to. I mean, it makes a lot more sense that there still are many disgruntled Berniacs who likely were close to this information and could have sent it out. And then there are all the other arguments that you've been through before that, it's just nonsensical to do it the way as a hack, it's far more logical that it was a leak, that somebody just put it on a USB stick and said, here you go.
Well, but not just that. I mean, it keeps, for me, coming back to why is Kim.com suddenly a political activist? He's basically been a hacker his whole life. He's been arrested for, I think, freaking phone numbers or credit cards or something when he was pretty young, back when dial-up was an issue. And then he created a website that allowed people to share gigantic files like movies and things like that, charging a subscription fee, basically. Again, understanding the law, finding loopholes, and yes, maybe he didn't violate specific laws, but I think he did facilitate the theft of intellectual property, and so now he's suddenly so interested in U.S. politics. It makes no sense to me, and there's all these characters that show up, Seth Rich, Kim.com, all the people, Jack Berkman, and all the people surrounding the investigation of Seth Rich. No one's talking about Eric Braverman, who is the guy that John Podesta said was the leaker. Why don't we hear anything about Eric Braverman? I think this is all a distraction, and I do not trust Kim.com at all.
Good. Well, I agree with you. So let's go back into the slides. Okay. This is something that our good friend Fabian suggested we bring back up again. And he's right. The real story here, this is something Judicial Watch unearthed, that back in around the 2009-10 timeframe, McCain was apparently a minority, somebody on McCain's staff was urging the IRS to target Tea Party groups.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And this uniparty that we have really doesn't like to see Americans get animated against the deep state, against a crooked IRS, against corruption in government. And that's exactly what began to bubble up to the surface in my mind with this whole Tea Party movement that was sparked by the comment of that, what's the guy's name, Rick Santilli, I think, or Santilli or whatever, on CNBC. He was the one who suggested that it was time for a Tea Party. And next thing you know, there were all these Tea Party movements. And so this is a reminder. Fabian thought it would be worthwhile, and I agree with him, which is why we're doing it, to remind everybody that this whole inquiry that we're talking about, presently it's the 2015-16 election. The real inquiry needs to go way further back than that. It should probably start, I would argue, June of 2008 or thereabouts. It should start there and look at every single election. What influences on both sides were trying to purchase the national political figures to make sure that they would have their way, or at least not get prosecuted as much, through the course of the 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and now 18 elections. That's a fair inquiry. And we don't need a blue ribbon commission. We need a group that has subpoena power, prosecutorial discretion to really get into this and give a report to the American people about what truly happened, not to political insiders. That group should not be based in Washington, D.C. doing the work. It should be outside Washington, D.C. And we really need to get back into it because, even now in the last 24 hours, we've had McCain make asinine comments about what Trump should and should not do in negotiating with Putin. I mean, John McCain, if he wants to weigh in on things like that, he should have won the damn freaking election of 2008. Right. And had he done that, had he not suspended his campaign and looked like an idiot, I'm not saying he could have won, but he's a failure as a national, political candidate. He let the Republicans down. His loss brought us Obama.
He's the source of the dossier.
He's the source of the dossier. And, the man should just, he's got precious little time left. Enjoy the remaining time he has on Earth.
STFU?
Yeah, and just spend time with your family. But, shut your damn pie hole, dude. So here's actually a piece here by Molly Hemingway in The Federalist. And I have to say, I'm getting increasingly disenchanted with the Brett Baier panel, because they have these panelists on there who are from outer space, as far as I'm concerned. If I wanted to watch MSNBC, I know how to find that on the television dial. It's easy to do, but I don't need to see an MSNBC. This, I guess, is not Hemingway, it's somebody else, Margot Cleveland. But this is a long article. We're not trying to go through it. now, even every paragraph. But it's really worth reading this, soaking it in, and understanding that the Obama administration, which, after all, spied aggressively on many journalists, James Rosen, is rumored to have spied on the Senate, spied on perhaps the Supreme Court.
It's crazy.
Spied, it seems, on a campaign. I mean, imagine if the George W. Bush administration had been spying on Barack Obama's campaign. The hell to pay that would have happened once Barack Obama got that crook Eric Holder in as Attorney General and his crooked team. The hell to pay that would have been, sent against the W. Bush administration had that happened. And look, Donald Trump, frankly, I think is being too patient here.
Yeah.
I mean, he took a lot of abuse from a Barack Obama. Remember the drop the mic thing?
Yes.
After the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah.
He ought to run for damn president and win. Drop the mic. He did that.
Pick it up.
He kind of did that. So, I mean, it's a year and a half. Donald Trump, he can be impulsive, he can be explosive, he can, make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But, I mean, I think he's being too damn patient with his crew, frankly, based on what's in the public domain. And Lord knows what he knows, actually, that's not in the public domain. Now, here's something in this Philadelphia newspaper that actually is, I think, optimistic in a way, because it suggests that Mueller may actually, having issued this indictment, which Rosenstein was careful to say does not show any suggestion of collusion or American involvement. If he's spent a lot of time in this, over a year, and he's got these indictments, don't show collusion. It's kind of time to say, I'm finished, I've done my job, and just drop it at this point.
It's ridiculous, the whole thing. Absolutely absurd, Charles. I don't think Robert Mueller could find a piece of hay in a haystack.
That's right.
Well, actually, I think he's saying it's a needle stack when there's actually no needles there.
All right, so this is something that I did this, and we're not obviously even going to go through all the links, but I wanted to, any of the links, but I wanted to have on a page some key pieces of evidence I'm going to describe for you that help me understand anyway how these two, how Crooked and Slick or Sick Willie, how they got together. Now, your friend Lee Stranahan was the one who clued me into this Carol Quigley guy.
Quigley.
And here's an excerpt, a quote from Carol Quigley's work. I'll just read this quickly, the beginning of it. There does exist and has existed for a generation an international Anglophile network which operates to some extent. And it goes on to say, I know of the operations of this network because I've studied it for 20 years and was permitted for 2 years in the early 1960s to examine its papers and secret record. Okay?
What?
This is the Georgetown professor who was a major league advisor to Bill Clinton when he was at Georgetown, talking about an Anglophile conspiracy. And I didn't put the quote out here, but the leader of it back then was none other than Cecil Rhodes. Bill then goes on to become a Rhodes Scholar. So has Bill Long, he grew up in Hot Springs, which is like, it's not even, you're not growing up in Las Vegas. You're not growing up in Little Rock. You're growing up like in a dog racing track, in Hot Springs, Arkansas, in this strange family and strange circumstances.
It's like nothing going on over there.
Well, it's all kinds of stuff going on, and none of it's legitimate.
Got it.
And the point is, you want to get out of that. You go to Washington, D.C., and you've got big eyes, and you're Jed Clampett and the Beverly Hillbillies in Washington, D.C. Anyway, so Bill has long, I think, been interested in and exposed to this whole globalist, international conspiracy stuff. He soaks it up when he's over there in England and doesn't finish his Oxford degree, but somehow he leaves or gets kicked out. We don't yet know what really happened there. That, I think, this experience with Carol Quigley, the chapter of his spending time with Carol Quigley, needs to be examined in great depth, and you can be sure I will try to do that.
Nice.
So he gets to Yale Law School by curious means. We're not going to go into all this stuff of, it was during the draft, did he evade the draft? I think he did. He ends up at Yale Law School. What does he do when he gets to Yale Law School? And I've seen this story many different places. We don't have to hit this link because I'll describe the story. But if you're interested, viewers, later you can read the link. Hillary arrives, Bill arrives, and we all know from getting to college, the first week you're there, in graduate school, the first week you're there, whatever, everyone's swapping stories about who they are, and when you get to graduate school, you're a lot more important. You're not talking about being the student body president or, championship skier or something like that. He's a Rhodes Scholar, he's this and that, but what does he get known for?
Rape?
No, not as yet. Not then, anyway. He goes around Yale Law School bragging about, I spent time in New Haven, and, as an undergraduate, many times I was over at Yale Law School for different reasons. It's a beautiful place. And here's this idiot from Arkansas going around thinking he's going to make time with people with this line. Did you know? Arkansas has the biggest watermelons in the world. It's like, what? And so who would fall for that?
Well, I mean, what does that even...
Well, who would fall for that?
Who cares?
Hillary Clinton.
Oh.
That was the line that excited her interest. That some guy
How do
from
you know that?
It's in this. It's all over there. It's how they got together. Her curiosity was piqued by this guy who was going around bragging about the size of watermelons that were, being raised in this state of Arkansas. I mean, it just, why would Bill do that in New Haven? I mean, it's not like Yale Law School is. I didn't get into Yale Law School. I really wanted to go, and when I didn't get in, I was told that this is back in 1978 that there were 180 slots for Yale Law School.
New York City watermelons too small.
No, exactly. And I didn't talk about watermelons, silly me. No, there are 180 slots, and I was told that there are 500 applications every year at Yale Law School where the applicants have a perfect grade point average, 4.0, and a perfect LSAT score. And that's 500 for 180 places, and they get many more than 500 applications. So, I mean, this is a group of pretty smart people in the main, and you're going to go think you can make time with the ladies by bragging about the size of watermelons that are produced in your state?
Perhaps it's code for something.
I don't know. But, so this is back in the starry-eyed days. Remember, Hillary had made a fool, frankly, of herself at her valedictorian, at her first class day speech at Wellesley. I've had several people confirm to me, actually, since we talked about it last time, they were there at the graduation. They were disgusted by the stunt she pulled.
What did she do?
She was president of the school or whatever, and she had to submit her speech. She was offered a chance to give a speech. She submitted a copy of a speech that was approved by the school, and then tore it up, and spent the whole time humiliating, in part, an African-American senator, Robert Brooke, I think his name was, for not doing enough. He was a Republican and not doing enough and this and that. And turning, what should have been, college graduations are supposed to be joyous events. I mean, parents are, their kids have grown up, hopefully they've got a job or they're on the trajectory to having a job. It's a time to celebrate the sacrifice and all that. And no, she turns it into a shit show. And
she's good at that.
She is very good at that, and they're very bad at that. So then our friend, this is a book to get. Jeff Girth and Don Van Natta don't need any help from me. I think they each have won Pulitzer Prizes. But this is a book, I think it's the definitive book, or it was thought to be the definitive book about Hillary Rodham Clinton, and it was published in June of 2007. So right as she was 5-6 months into her campaign, her first failed campaign to be the presidential nominee or president of the United States. But this talks about here that they had it says here, they struck a plan, one that would become the foundation. And I said, no pun intended there, I guess.
Right.
Would be that, first Bill would become president, then she would become president. And Girth got a lot of flack and Don Natta for making these comments. I think the Clinton Eastas went after him, and that's why I put the footnotes in. But Girth swears by this. This is what happened. They were going to revolutionize the Democratic Party, and that's what they tried to do. Only I think at root, Bill is more conservative economically. I think Hillary, I don't think Hillary understands economics in the slightest. She thinks economics is about, bending the rules of the system and getting a crooked donor to give her a house. She does, or give her a speech, or give her a book. She doesn't understand it. You got to economics, business. There's a product, there's a service. There's a competitive marketplace. You try to make sure the product has attributes and features that somebody would want to buy.
Right.
You market it. You get it to market. You satisfy your customer complaints. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're not nasty. And you don't say, well, look, unless you buy this product, the National Lampoon cover, buy this magazine or I'll shoot this dog. That's her approach to economics, to politics, right? So this is this whole book, this is just a small bit of it, but the whole book is really worth reading to understand how these people think. This is a group that plays at being public servants, which is really all about trying to dominate people in the United States and around the world with these, in theory, enlightened social justice warriors. And how many dead bodies are around the Clintons, right? A lot. So then you have this whole idea. We don't need to put this link up because we've had it up before. Just almost exactly as this book was coming out, the first one, Jeff Girth, The Atlantic has a story about the Clinton Foundation whose title is "This Is Not Charity." And who was the head of the FBI in October of 2007, Jason?
It was Robert Mueller.
Right. So you see in this magazine, Atlantic, a long feature story about a supposed charity, and the title is "This Is Not Charity." And so what do? You don't investigate it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just exactly when Uranium One is percolating along. This is after a 4-year investigation that couldn't find anything happened. And now you see this article. And on top of which, Bill comes out with a book that's published in September of 2007 and featured at a Clinton Global Initiative that doesn't exist, called Giving, How Each of Us Can Change the World. Now I say here in red that it actually should be called Taking, because there are reports that this book netted Bill $6.4 million.
Wow.
So how do you write a book about charity, collect $6.4 million for doing so in the middle of a political campaign? This is really a political commercial here. I'm a great person. I've created this charity. Imagine what we can do when my wife becomes president of the United States. God forbid, as they say in Little Italy. God forbid. But anyway, here's this passage. And it's really amusing. It's kind of like this book, Giving. We could do a series of shows. We could get people to read, that there's a show, Drunk History.
Yeah.
Where you'd read these different passages. Get them to read a passage, and then we could have the fraudometer spinning. We take whatever the person's name is as you read the passage, and then see how many of the people named in this book, subsequently after the book's being published, were convicted, accused, etc., of fraud.
Yeah.
But here's Bill bragging about, and it's page 28 of the book here, bragging about how you could use a charity. Use a charity to sell a product or service for a good cause.
Wow.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
That is not, if you're going to do something that's charitable, that doesn't involve making money, right? It's just by
you're not
definition.
allowed to sell anything.
Right. You can't do that. You've got to, the charity has got to be engaged exclusively in charitable purposes. And so then he goes on to explain this in his twisted mind, his sick mind. When I was in politics in Arkansas, one mandatory annual appearance for every politician on the stage was the Gillette Coon Supper. And he goes on and on and on to talk about it, when a crowd twice as large as the total population actually paid good money to eat barbecued raccoon, which is what I would call barbecued roadkill. Yeah. So here you're admitting that it was a great thing to get involved with in Arkansas, that what we're going to do is we're going to charge people money to eat roadkill to raise money for a football team. Now, how many times do you have to raise money for a football? It's not like football equipment's that expensive.
Well, a football team, is that even the most worthy? Is that a charity? Can't the football team sell tickets to the game?
This
who
is
the
high
hell
school
is
football.
Eating raccoon?
That could be an upgrade from what they normally do, for all I know. But this is just, did nobody around Team Clinton, take a look at this? And I swear to God, I've now read this book. I actually have somebody autographed the copy. I've got to figure out who autographed it. But down at the Strand, I got this.
Rocky Raccoon.
My favorite, that's right. My favorite bookstore. I'll give a plug to the Strand, which is hardly a conservative bookstore. It's out there, progressive, anti-Trump, but it's really it's one of the world's best used bookstores. And never buy a Clinton book, from Barnes and Noble or anything. Initially, you just go right down to the Strand. You can always get it for cents off, and frequently they're first edition autographed.
Wow.
So Anyway, I think as we think about what really did happen with this Clinton Foundation, what's going to happen, you have to go back into the history and understand these two people. These are unfortunately larger-than-life figures whose motivations need to be understood. This is not, they're not going to be able successfully to blame this on anybody other than the two of them. And with
They
that,
love blaming stuff on other people.
yeah. Let's go to the next page and we'll pick the pace up a little here. Okay. The first thing to understand here is that this whole idea, before we get into how many emails are missing and all this kind of stuff, the idea that Hillary Clinton's State Department would be the only State Department in the history of, while the internet was in use, the only State Department to transact 100% of its business on secret servers using alias email accounts and unsecure devices, and that Hillary would be allowed to walk off the premises after being Secretary of State and retain all this private information, just as she was seeking to raise money for a presidential campaign and endow a foundation, and that nobody would complain about it, nobody would do anything about it until December 5th, 2014, without Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett and Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch and a lot of people at the high levels of the Obama administration knowing precisely what was going on, is preposterous.
Well, we already know that it's incorrect. Wasn't it Donna Brazil who sent an email saying that Hillary's got emails from Barack Obama on the fake server?
Yeah, we know that that's the case. I mean, it's part of the.
Nobody's said anything to Obama about it.
Well, but it's time now. We didn't go through a process in the 2008 election where, as reparations to the African American community, we would elect Barack Obama and then he would be a saint. Anything he did, was correct.
Are you sure we didn't go through
I'm
that?
positive. I know I didn't do that.
Seems like it did.
But that's just not right. It's not fair to any. It's not even fair to Barack Obama to go down that track. And so, it's time, well past time now. There are enough abuses. If W had done what we know Barack Obama has done, if Trump, God forbid, had done 1/10 of what Barack Obama we know he has done, there would be riots in the streets. And I do want to, if you wouldn't mind, hit on this vault file link. And to the people at the FBI vault, thank you for getting this information out there. We're going to go into this in some depth in a second. But this thing, I think, Jason, the first time that we had anything up on the vault, there were maybe like 16, 15. It's now 23 sections.
No.
And
so the hits keep on coming, Charles.
Yeah, and more to come. And we're going to take you through. We don't have to hit 23 right now because we're going to do it in a bit. But there's a lot of information out there. For those of you who say, who want to say with a straight face, you want to debate me on Twitter or elsewhere and say, well, there's nothing here. Okay? I know you are an idiot if you say something like that, because I have actually looked at every page of these 23 documents.
I don't doubt that.
And I've also, many times, and I've also gone to the trouble of questioning and figuring out how many pages are missing. You can figure that out because they redact. And then they have page number order, and you go through the math, and you can figure out how many pages there should be and how many pages there are, therefore how many pages are missing. And there are lots, there's several thousand there and many thousands missing.
Wow.
So there's a massive file here that the FBI has, that investigators have. There's also a growing file. We don't need to hit the link here. We don't need to hit this link, but on the William J. Clinton Foundation. But let's hit this link, this Free Republic link. And I'm sorry, I love Free Republic, but the reason I had to do this is if we hit this Independent Sentinel thing here, I was in the library and they wouldn't let me hit it in the library. All right, so this...
Speaking of hitting it, Peter Strzok.
That's right. This to me is a massive, massive story. Peter Strzok was given evidence that Hillary's emails were being directed to a foreign entity, and he had the authority, conflicted as he is and was, to say, you know what, that's such a good link and hit, we're not going to follow it because I'm that good.
It's the opposite of investigating, isn't it?
It's what happened with Tsarnaev, it's what happened with the Clinton Foundation, it's what happened. It's like the Federal Bureau of let's not investigate anything that might embarrass a Democrat or a member of the Uniparty. I mean, that's not what we signed up for here. And if that's what this has become, we've got Rosenstein and Ray saying we're so concerned about the institution. What institution are you talking about? You're talking about the Uniparty. I'm not concerned about the Uniparty. I'm concerned about getting to the bottom of this corruption. And this guy Louis Gohmert, people in the parlors and the faculty lounges in the East and West Coast, Chicago, and maybe some portions of Texas like to make fun of his mannerisms and whatever. Louis Gohmert is a lawyer. He's a former judge. He's a kick-ass public servant. He was on the field when Scalise was shot. This is a good and decent man, and he is rightly pissed off.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand why more of these Washington swamp rats are a lot more pissed off. I mean, the legislative branch is a co-equal branch of government with the executive branch, with the judiciary. Gohmert and his people in the House have every right. They have a responsibility to conduct oversight, and this cries out for oversight. Here we have this Peter Strzok, who, to me, did himself no favors by testifying. He's in the Clapper group. Open your mouth, and you look even stupider and more suspicious than if we just read what you said as opposed to heard what you said. And to me, the big question is I don't think it was sent just to one foreign entity. And I think it was sent, if I had to guess, people I've been talking to I think are very sharp, came to the same conclusions. UK is one entity, Canada is one entity, Israel is a possible entity, France is a possible entity.
What about Pakistan?
Pakistan.
Sorry.
You've got to learn how to pronounce it properly. Pakistan, indeed, is another entity. And, that the FBI wouldn't leap on that right away. At the same time, you've got the Awan brothers, Awan family, who knows what they were doing. Now you actually, somebody goes into Peter Strzok, hey, Peter, there's a foreign entity. All those emails that we know about, every single one of them went to this foreign entity over here. What do you want to do about it? I'm too busy texting Lisa Page.
Right.
I'm getting ready to be whatever I'll be, head of the FBI under President Hillary Clinton. I'm obviously not going to do anything that would screw that up. This needs to go into the highest, form of whatever 5 siren alert, 25 siren alert. People should be dropping everything to jump on this and explain to the American people what in the hell was going on. What's this?
This is just an image I created he's texting.
Oh, I see.
LOL. It's Peter Strzok.
Well done.
Anyway, back to the...
Yeah, so if we go back into the slides, this here, this is something I wrote, and it had at the time I wrote it many more than 0 Facebook shares. I don't know why it's down to 0. That seems to be manipulated by Facebook.
Mark Zuckerberg has been unsharing.
It had hundreds. It should have had, the one I did around the same day had I think 82,000 Facebook shares. So this has purposely been manipulated downwards. This was written, if we go down here to the date, which is a little bit further. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 16 March. How can you have 127 comments and no Facebook shares? Obviously, they manipulated it in the standings so people won't read this. But this is the article where I basically said, March 16, 2015, Hillary Clinton will never be President of the United States, is what I said back then. March 16, 2015, a month before she announced. Okay? This was at a time, and this goes through in some of the depth, this is at a time when the Democratic Party had a chance to actually win. Okay? Instead, they sign up, for crooked. All in for crooked. At this time, crooked is one of the 3 Class A directors of the Clinton Foundation, by changing the bylaws, not having notified anybody of that. Illegally blowing up the Clinton Foundation, its tax status. The filings are a shambles. And she's going to seriously think that she can run for office, and the Obama administration is going to say, you know what, that's fine. We're all in for that. We know how to rig elections. That's what we do. We tried in Kenya. We were trying in Israel. We're trying to, we can rig this. We got this.
Didn't you say, what does that even mean? How do you rig an election? It's
right.
Like, please.
Exactly.
You know what that means.
Right. So, again, I don't want to pull these links up, Jason, because we've done them before, but these are links for the doubters out there, and there always are a few doubters who downvote us every week or whatever. But just, you want to have an intelligent, civilized debate with me about whether the Clinton Foundation existed, and it had the approval for international activities. You read this memo, prove to me that you comprehend English, we'll have a discussion about it. They never sought approval to have international activities validly, and immediately started conducting them by around January of 2001. When Bill started doing work with the American Indian Foundation, which didn't exist.
I don't know anything about that.
What are you talking about? And then, you're not allowed to engage in any illegal activities. You want to see the history there? Read this memo. Okay? And, this is a shameless plug here, this one. This is the first detailed report that I put up on my site. And I periodically go back and read it to see, what did I miss? And I don't think I missed all that much back in April of 2015. And it's worthwhile. This is a shameless plug. I said that in advance. If you go further down, Jason, you can see what I'm talking about. There's a link to the actual paper here. And it's pretty long. It's like 20 pages or so. And there's appendix, information, all kind of stuff. So read this at your leisure. And the FBI has had access to this since April 20th. And anybody around the world can read this for free. How can you read this thing, open an IRS investigation, and not bring an indictment? How do you do that? How does the Trump administration not, I lay out 10 specific concerns, but how does the Trump administration not decide to go back over the ground of what the IRS should have been doing, starting April 20th, 2015, and see who softened the investigation, who put obstacles in the way, who obstructed the investigation, and how many of those people are still working for the IRS and the Department of Justice?
Well, I was going to say, I think we're seeing those guys basically testifying before Congress over the past 6 or 12 months.
Right, but they should do more than testifying. I mean, they should be subject to the same aggressive practices that went up against Manafort. There should be FBI raids, many places.
It's really crazy that Paul Manafort is in solitary confinement and hasn't been convicted of anything.
Right.
It's really...
And Hillary's in her wine cellar or wine bottle.
Right.
So this is an important question here, raised in Zero Hedge. This is, again, you see 8,400 shares. That's a lot of shares for something. Yeah,
it's today.
Since today.
Wow.
I think this is updated as of that moment, because I sent you the slides before then.
You completely ignored it.
So this is more take on the thing that I previously showed about Gomer, but again, worth reading very carefully, and we're going to get into this a little bit in another broadcast. This IG Chuck McCullough, he was the guy who discovered the anomaly, and that the final report that was produced by that ICIG was produced on July 6, 2015. So the query is, when did they discover the anomaly? As a guess, they discovered it before Hillary decided to run. And you would have thought, I mean, call me stupid, but you're the former Secretary of State, your husband's a former President of the United States, you got this dude Barack Obama as the sitting President of the United States, you would have thought that as a courtesy, the Clintons might have said to the president, listen, I'm kind of thinking about running for office. You're the president. Are you in? Are you going to back me? Or are you going to help me? Do you have any advice? And you would have thought that as part of that, even if it wasn't the three of them talking, it was Podesta or, the Podfather or somebody. Podfather, remember, having worked for Clinton, having worked for Obama, there have got to have been people who could have, considered, experienced people who could have said, on the one hand, Hillary, you're about to be under FBI investigation, you got all these problems, your foundation's a fraud, we kind of don't want to lose this election, it really might be a bit of a problem if Donald Trump or somebody like Donald Trump wins, why don't you just stay home and bake cookies? You would have thought there would have been some sort of a discussion here, but evidently not.
So when did he was the... He took over for Vince Foster, didn't he, the Podfather?
He had many different roles in the Clinton White House. He was he didn't take over. Vince Foster was never the chief of staff. He was the chief of staff, I want to say, in that crucial period, in and around the time of the impeachment, the trial, and through the final days, I believe, of the Clinton presidency, he held a senior role in the Clinton final days of the presidency, and then he also did work for Obama in a senior role.
Played ping pong with Obama?
I don't know, skeet shooting.
That was all Dick Cheney.
Yeah, but remember Obama said one of his favorite activities is skeet shooting? I don't think we've seen a single picture of the former president of the United States actually skeet shooting. Have you ever gone skeet shooting?
One time.
It's not that easy.
I got 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4, yeah, okay. Great.
I did.
That's good, but yeah, typical it's 100 that they go for.
Oh, well, it was like a little, I was pretty young at the time that I did it.
Young and you were skeet shooting? You were like
I was maybe like 18, something like that.
Not like 6, like
well,
skeet shooting.
No.
6. Hey, Jason, why'd you go skeet shooting? Yeah,
no.
I don't think so. All right, if we go to the next page. All right, this is something I want to give a shout out to 2 people here. There's a great friend of the show who now has allowed me to use his name, and that's Kevin O'Rourke, who brought my attention to this dump 23, and together with the Pink Panther, our great friend in Japan, and Fabien Chalandon. Hats off to you, Fabien, for your country winning the World Cup, which just happened a few hours ago. I actually watched a bit of that match, and I don't particularly care for watching soccer, or football, but it was a good match. Anyway, you don't need to hit the link, but this is an excerpt from page 11. This link we talked about before. Again, you don't have to. Well, you did all right. So we've talked about this at length. We've done a show about the senior State Department walk-in who comes in January 27th, 2016. Remember, this is just as John Giacolone is actively investigating things and about to resign in protest over something that happened. This is just before McCabe becomes deputy director of the FBI. He walks in and says, hey, I sent this thing to Comey and I asked for a response and I got nothing. Actually, you see this is written up, evidence collection 1/15/2016. That's interesting, the date.
Why is that interesting?
Because, is that page 11 or is that the very beginning?
That's the beginning. That's page 5.
Oh, okay. So that's just interesting that this must be, the guy sends the letter on the 10th of January and they must have written this up. Well, anyway, if you keep going, well, we've done this before, so I don't want to waste too much time on it, but the senior State Department official sends a letter, and we didn't know when he sent the letter. Well, with this dump 23, if we go back into the slide, the body of the slide, this letter was sent to Director Comey on January 10th, 2016, and in dump 23, at page 122 and following, please don't go into the slide, it's very, very long. Okay, there's 8-10 pages that are there, and it's an impassioned plea by the State Department person, basically saying, I'm providing this to you, Mr. Comey, to provide evidence which could lead to the conviction of former Secretary of State Hillary, misspelled Clinton, for lying to, that's the way it is in the thing, to a Congressional House Committee. Okay, that's over Benghazi. But then it says, additionally, this letter should provide evidence of criminal actions by Hillary Clinton and her personal and official staff, including some who were also acting while under the pay of other persons and organizations, such as the Clinton Foundation and its partners.
Who do you think he's talking about, Charles?
Uma Abedin.
Exactly.
And Doug Band and people like that.
Right.
Right. So I mean, this is something. If you want to talk about whether there's smoke or fires or an inferno, okay. This is a
nuclear reactor meltdown.
Yeah, this is Fukushima. I mean, this is unbelievable that Comey would have gotten this.
He's like,
yeah, I'll give it the stroke.
He literally gave it the stroke.
That's right, give it the stroke. He's busy with Paige. Let him have fun.
Jeez.
And honestly, so this is January 10th, 2016. A senior State Department person is basically saying, in so many words, I know this is a slush fund. I know this has been going on for a long time. I could give you chapter and verse on it. and he provides chapter and verse to Comey, and Comey doesn't even acknowledge receipt of it. So I mean, this is one again. If Christopher Wray is somebody who can be trusted, and I have my big doubts about that.
I don't think he is.
Yeah. Then this is something that we need to go back into. What the hell happened? You know, where was Comey on this? Why didn't he look carefully at this? If he did look carefully at this, why did the trail, not immediately set up, fires going about the Clinton Foundation in January of 2016? This is the second time. Remember, Comey led the investigation, the original investigation into the Clinton Foundation for public corruption. He got involved late in December 2001 and stayed more or less directly on point as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and then as in Rod Rosenstein's current job, Deputy Attorney General. He was all over this. Now he sees it again, and he says, you know what? I better get working on that exoneration letter. She's obviously innocent.
You know what I was looking for, Charles? Was it Katica who had identified who the...
Yeah, Katica.
I'm not finding her here on Twitter.
She's under at GOP analyst, I think. At GO. She's in the Zero Hedge link that we've already put up. All that stuff is there.
Okay. Well, but
she's wonderful.
And who is it that she thinks the walk-in was?
Somebody called William Francisco. And who knows who it really was? But the point is, our FBI should know at this point.
Well, they know. He walked right in.
Right. And identified himself.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of FBI investigations that have not been done properly, in my mind, here are 6 of them. Okay,
so that's a game show. FBI investigations that have not been done properly.
And but the people whose names are in red, are connected one way or another to this witch hunt against Donald Trump. We have the William J. Clinton Foundation investigation where there's obvious fraud. I'm going to take you through. We're going to do this a week from today in great depth, but you're Rod Rosenstein in charge of prosecuting tax frauds. You're James Comey, you're trying to do this investigation. You've got a lot of resources, okay? Mm-hmm. And what don't you do? You don't look at the Clinton Foundation and say, let's start at the beginning. Where's their first tax return? They should have had a tax return for October 23, 1997 to December 31, 1997. Let's look at that return. Sorry, boss, we don't have one of them. Okay. Well, it's supposed to be called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, located at 5604 Hawthorne Road in Little Rock, 72207.
We changed all of that.
Yeah, we're not going to use that name or that address, and we're not going to file a tax return. Well, the first tax return we're going to file, we can't file one for 97 because Bill Clinton got impeached on December 19th, 2008. We don't want this tax return, which would blow everything up, before the impeachment, because then he'd certainly get impeached. So we're going to not file a tax return and assume that nobody will find out about it after we don't get impeached. Mm. So then they file their second tax return. They file a return for 98 in 99. And their brilliant idea is, what we're going to do is we're going to use our wrong name, our wrong address, and we're going to hide most of our contributions. We're going to claim with a straight face that even though one of our 3 trustees, David H. Pryor, has been heading up a fundraising exercise for the Presidential Legal Expense Trust that gets 40,000 donations, small donations, over $3 million, we're going to claim that we got only 3, and that each of them were gigantic. The biggest one was for $2.3 million. And what we're going to tell our IRS, because we control our IRS, we have to identify the name of the $2.3 million donor. So the IRS knows this. Dopey James Comey and, Bug-Eye Rod Rosenstein and Big Bob Mueller, they could go into the files. Christopher Wray, if you want to, acquit yourself, you go into the files and see what the Clinton Foundation claimed as the $2.3 million donor. This is out of $3,050,000 total. So 67% of the donations, roughly, from one donor. Did that donor actually exist? No, it didn't, because by statute, the Presidential Inaugural Committee, which was supposedly that donor and gave, in theory, $2.3 million, had to go out of business within 180 days of January 20th, 1997. So, you don't have to do a lot of work to see that the Clinton Foundation was, how do you pronounce Chimera?
Chimera?
Chimera, is that how you pronounce it? And what's the other?
That's a chimera.
That's a chimera?
Like a thing for a light to soften it, like a diffusion?
Or what do they call it? It's like a mirage. The Clinton Foundation, there's no legal entity here that actually has passed muster, that is using its proper name, that's following the statute, that's doing everything properly. And I've only gotten you to 1998-99, and yet the tag team of James Comey, Robert Mueller, Rod Rosenstein wasted 4 years, not finding and escalating an obvious fraud with the Clinton Foundation. And these people still have credibility, and in Mueller's case are actually leading an investigation that is slowing down the progress of an elected president, and I would argue attempting to overturn the election result in 2016. It's just mind-numbing. That's one example.
Who's the guy? Pryor? Who is he?
David H. Pryor was a governor of Arkansas. He was a senator from Arkansas. He was the first dean of the Clinton School of Public Service. He was an independent trustee of the Clinton Foundation from the very beginning.
It's good they have him there. They could say, "You have any priors?"
Yeah, his son was the Attorney General of the state. You got to have him involved, right? So then nobody in Arkansas is going to go after you.
Right.
And they're not going to investigate that. Then you get the Ramboxy case. We've talked about that with the Pink Panther and ad nauseum. Rosenstein led that misinvestigation that didn't get to the heart of it. Mueller was the FBI director. And why did they not draw the connections that needed to be drawn between the Clinton Foundation that was promoting the business of Ramboxy and Chelsea Clinton, who gets a job at McKinsey, working on a team that is hired by Ramboxy. It's just they don't tease out any of these relationships. If we can go back to that slide. Yeah. Then you have the twin investigations of Gallion and Gupta. Gallion is a crooked insider trading firm. Gupta was worldwide chairman of McKinsey, this vaunted globalist guy from India with all these accolades and all these connections and all these frauds, and they didn't get to all of the frauds. They just tagged Gupta on a few publicly traded insider trading deals. But when you start thinking about Gupta and maybe Gallion's connections to the Clinton Foundation, to the American India Foundation, to Ramboxy, to crooked investments they've been making in private firms and not disclosing and giving benefits to politicians around the world, in India, etc. One of the things we're going to show you a little bit later, at the close of this presentation, is the degree to which globalism has benefited China and India, or some people like to call it Chindia, where these globalist projects allow crooked rising companies in China and India to steal intellectual and other property and then manufacture goods in competition with Western firms that have to pay taxes and pay for the cost of complying with regulations. All of this is interconnected here. And it's as if our master Strzok, is supposed to be a top counterintelligence guy. The way it works with him, it seems, is that if there is a complex plot, you take it to Peter Strzok, and he'll say, "I'll get back to you when I'm finished texting Lisa Page, which is going to be in my next life." It's as if the whole idea of ferreting out these frauds that are so damaging to Americans, to American workers across the political spectrum, that are killing jobs, and creating a corrupt uniparty state in this country, the very body that's supposed to have the resources to go after that is not going after it. Then we get to this SAC Capital. Okay, who was in charge of the FBI when SAC Capital was tagged with a $1.8 billion fraud insider trading thing?
Looks like Robert Mueller.
But what didn't they catch? The most active player in the laureate education leveraged buyout was Stevie Cohen. Okay, and I've been saying this laureate education thing, that's the one area where I almost agree with Barack Obama in that he went after for-profit education schemes and shut them down. But he didn't shut down laureate. He shut down other ones, and he made sure that the ones that were shut down somehow magically ended up being bought for pennies on the dollar by one of Barack Obama's biggest campaign contributors, Marty Nesbitt, who's on the board. He's on the board of the Obama Foundation.
He's just going against the ones that he's not getting money from.
Exactly. So, here's number 5. And number 6, most importantly, is this ghost stories investigation. Here I've put, if we could just hit this one link here. Thanks, Jason. Okay, this, for those of you who have not done this before, we won't pull the stuff up, but here's a guide to lots and lots of information. But on June 27, 2010, that's when the FBI arrested 11 Russian agents. Now, who was President of the United States June 27, 2010?
Obama.
Right. And so what motivation would Barack Obama and his team have for arresting these 10 people, and instead of sending them up down to Guantanamo or sending them somewhere and dry cleaning them for months and years to find out what they're really doing, instead we do an unequal trade and we send these people back to Russia like within 2 weeks of being rounded up. That doesn't make sense to me, and there's some documents here. In light of what we've been looking at with the Uranium One thing, what William Campbell supposedly knows about what the FBI may have been investigating, this reeks to high heaven the fact that these people would have been rounded up, not really vetted and investigated carefully, and then just sent back to Russia never to be heard from again.
Is this the Anna Chapman crew?
This is the Anna Chapman crew. And it reeks, it's almost as if the Obama team didn't want real investigators to ask these people questions for fear that the spies would reveal the degree to which they had compromised the Obama administration, maybe the Bush administration, maybe the Clinton administration. These spies who were rounded up were people who've been operating in this country for years and years and years.
Charles, I don't want to digress or get into talking about someone that we shouldn't talk about who's very tall, but he was bringing you up quite a lot this week, mentioning how at our very first meeting you told us that you once had a chance to meet Anna Chapman,
by accident.
And he was discussing it in such a way that I feel was intended to lead viewers to believe that you somehow might know something more about her than you do. And now that you're saying this, that the kicking out of Anna Chapman and all these spies was related to trying to cover up things related to Barack Obama, I'm curious to go back and watch that video again and try and understand exactly what it was that Mr. G was trying to do in those statements.
Well, I mean, look, I think the idea that a foreign government would try to send a beautiful, and she was at the time stunningly beautiful, young lady into New York City to try to meet, or for that matter, Washington, D.C. or California or something, to meet people. It's not exactly the first time that was ever tried, and it's not as if we don't do that too, right? But my point in putting this up here is that the American people we deserve, across the political spectrum, to have a serious inquiry into the degree to which, I'd go back to the Bush years, first H.W. Bush years, in opening up this idea of globalism, what was really going on? Were corruptible and corrupt Americans getting in league with corruptible and corrupt foreign people around the world to concoct these deals that no one would be ever able to figure out as a means to pay off politicians who needed to be paid off, as a means to intimidate enemies, as a means to launder money for crooked spying schemes around the world. It's this one big happy, corrupt criminal enterprise that actually the uniparty's all in for. And I'm sorry, I don't believe that that Americans, even Russians, Western Europeans, on balance, are going to say, this is absolutely fine by us. We like this. This is great. Yeah. No, I don't think that's right. I think this is way out of control. Yeah. The inmates have been running the asylum for too long, and we really need to get answers to this. So with that, I want to quickly jump into some fun facts here. Now, I'll make this painless, or at least relatively painless. When you go and you meet people at cocktail parties or restaurants here in New York or DC or LA, it's the rage to be a globalist, right? It's fun.
Is it?
Sure. You get to go to London and Paris, and you get to say nasty things about Donald Trump and his supporters, and flit around the world and go to Davos and do this and that. But the question begs, how good has globalism been?
What is globalism?
So globalism, I mean, it's the basic idea is that it's antiquated to believe that you should be motivated by the American flag and maximizing the benefit of one country. We're all humans. We all live in one planet. You know, let's just maximize utility for the world. That's what we should do. Let's rid the world of injustice and inequality. Let's come up with sustainable solutions. But it's all rubbish, right? It's an interesting.
Sustainable solutions sound good.
Everything sounds good, but the reality is that we humans live on 70% of the planet's surface. So 30%. 70% is water.
Water, right.
30% is land. Okay. This is something that just shows, this is a simple chart actually, that shows how much money, this is all in US dollars, does the average person consume in the G6, G7 countries, in China, India, and in all other nations. And the purpose of this chart, for me, is to show you just how poor China was in 1988. Look at this. In 1988, before China really fully began to engage in the world scheme, the average person in China spent $179 per year.
Wow.
Per year.
It's not a lot.
Okay, whereas in the United States, we spent $13,000. Okay, talk about inequality. I mean, the inequality was massive then, right? And the reason I put this up is the average person in the world doesn't have any savings. It's the top 10%, maybe top 15%, depending on the country that has savings. The average person consumes what they earn. So the simple way to look at income is to look at consumption. Okay? The reason that we're able in the United States to consume as much as we do relative to the rest of the world is that this country is perceived to be safe. The wealthy like to invest in debt and equity. They're prepared to lend money to Americans. And so we're able to use our credit card and get mortgages and whatever. And a lot of the consumption growth that has occurred from 1988 on a per capita basis to 2016 is because for the moment, the world is ready to lend us money. Okay? So we look, by 2016, the average person is spending $34,000. Wow. Okay? And China, with all this vaunted progress, is still only spending $3,000 a person. So it's not like, you know, the mass of China is an attractive market for a typical American company. It's not. Okay? And China is, we'll show you in a bit, that China is one country that's done well under globalism. India has also done okay under globalism. Now, who has benefited the most from globalism? My alma mater. Take a look at Yale. In Yale?
Oh, wow.
I've long been wanting to show this in a comparative way. Mind you, this is a term bill for 1 year. When you sign up to go to Yale,
wow,
you have to spend for 4 years typically. And most people, even today, who get into these schools, many people do not get full rides. There are some schools, Princeton now says if you get into Princeton, you'll leave with no student debt, even if you otherwise would have to take out student debt at Yale. But look at this. At Yale, it was $17,000 for 1 year. After tax money you had to come up with for 1 year. Now look up here at the top, Jason. Or maybe make the type a little smaller if you can. So it costs $17,000 for 1 year of Yale, but the average person in America only spends $13,000 a year. Okay, this is 1 year, so multiply that by 4, $68,000 to go to Yale, and you're only consuming $13,000 a year.
Well, it's gotten worse because
a lot worse. Now it's $250,000 for 4 years.
That's crazy.
And so the point is, what you see here is we have a corruption everywhere. Corruption in academia. Of course, you're going to get these studies out of Yale and Harvard and Princeton saying globalism. Wow, we love globalism. That's great.
There's certain things, Charles, I've learned more about on YouTube than I did in college.
Well, but look, I enjoyed my time at Yale, and back then I think it was less corrupt. But you know, this globalist project, no, it really was, because Yale back then was an American institution. I mean, Yale and Harvard, I just pick on Yale, but these institutions that have gigantic endowments, have tax benefits from the federal government, the Connecticut government, the New Haven city government. Back in 1988 or before 1988, Yale drew its applicant pool primarily from the United States of America. Now, you know, it has a global audience of applicants, So the number of applications has skyrocketed. The cost of applying has gone up. They don't give you your money back when you don't get in. And they haven't increased the number of students that much. So they've been able to raise the tuition. They now have a global audience of schmucks, frankly, who will go and say, yeah, I'll give money to Yale, you know. And, you know, I shouldn't say it exactly that way since my own parents gave money to Yale, but, and for good reason, back when they were there in the 1940s and 50s, it was a very different place, and that they met there and whatever.
We should create a chart of the schmuck to endowment ratio.
That's right. But now, you know, there's no governance at these universities. We have the story that I haven't put a link up to that Yale, you know, here you got Brett Kavanaugh, #1 graduate at Yale Law School. That's hard, and I probably graduated summa undergraduate. Is up to be the Supreme Court justice. And what is Yale's reaction? The students are going crazy. It's going to be the end of the earth if Brett Kavanaugh becomes, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, Yale and these protected firms are supposed to be, they get a tax deduction in the United States for lessening the burdens of government by selling globalism without explaining their conflicts. And they have massive conflicts. The professors are getting fancy jobs out of it. They're getting consulting contracts from governments. They're doing, you know, there are all sorts of side deals they're getting out of this globalist project. The universities are getting side deals, they're getting funded by the government, they're getting all these benefits. And this does not, churning out a whole bunch of social justice warriors who, you know, who are running down the United States of America and running down the idea of the Constitution, does not strike me as something that is validly tax exempt. You know, and
why is it tax exempt? I mean, isn't it a for-profit university?
No, it's not. It's not a for-profit.
So what is all that money going to?
Yeah, it's a damn good question. and you know, and actually, it's an even better question when you go and these universities churn out people who are good with math and good with explaining things. I mean, you really need to segregate out a university like Yale or Harvard that has professional schools and say, okay, we've got the medical school and the health management school and the business school and the law school. These schools mint money, you know, and contribute money into the, whereas maybe the philosophy department at Yale and other departments,
acting department.
Well, that actually makes money as well.
Wow.
Music school, but you know, I think when you look at this with a clinical eye, it's past time to say we need objective scholarship. It's not like on the college campuses. You go in and you say, well, we're very careful to make sure that there's a 50-50 fair and balanced, you know, makeup of speakers. For every Bernie Sanders, we have, you know, one Mitt Romney, or you know, he's not even really that balanced. Somebody opposite to Bernie Sanders. It's like 99% of the speakers are the progressive liberal loons, and you know 99% of the professors are progressive liberal loons. There's stories out of these places that if you dare to write papers or say things that challenge orthodoxy, liberal progressive orthodoxy, then you're not going to be on the fast track to get into these graduate schools if that's what you want to do. So I think it's reached a tipping point. It's past the tipping point here. Globalism sucks. It really does, except for all but the cronies.
Yeah.
So if we go into the next page. Now, we're going to have, I hope, another good friend. This is name dropping, but there's a great human being named Gordon Chang. And Gordon, long ago, wrote a book, early some would say, about the dangers posed by China. I think he wrote it in around 2007. Now, we have links that we're going to show you where we get these numbers. These are from UNCTAD data, UNCTAD data. This is corrected to dollars on a consistent basis. This is the total amount of money spent. These are in millions of dollars by the mainland China. It's 1.4 trillion, 1.8 trillion, 2.3, $34.3 trillion was spent from 2007 to 2016 on a whole bunch of globalist projects, no doubt blessed by McKinsey and investment banks and commercial banks and consulting firms or whatever. They spent $34.3 trillion in China on buildings and complexes and ports and airports and you name it. But the total consumption, the stuff we were talking about, 10,000 per capita, going up to 34,000 in the United States, the total consumption in that period was only 29 trillion inside China. So clearly these projects are to make up for lost time. Now granted, China did not have the kind of infrastructure we had in 1988. So maybe they needed, as they got embarked on this project of competing globally, and maybe they needed to spend more.
Is this all these empty cities?
Empty cities. I think it's also graft. You say you spend 4.8 trillion, but there's no real evidence that that money was spent. Instead, it gets sent outside the country. So the ratio that I like to look at is total investment to total internal consumption. And there you see in China, it's 118%. In other words, for every dollar that people consume in China in this period, they actually invested 118 cents. Right? They invested more than they consumed. And you look at a different economy, look at the largest consumption market in the world, the United States economy. Here, in the same period, we spent less money on investment, 31.5 trillion, and we consumed 110.5 trillion. So for every dollar of consumption, we only invested 29 cents, which makes sense, right? I mean, if you think about the business world that you've been in, right? Most companies, particularly if they're privately owned companies, don't sit there and say, you know what, let's see how we can waste money, right? They don't go, so let's overpay for this. Let's, say that the foundation thing cost 165 million when it really only cost 80. They don't do that kind of stuff. They fight, particularly a family business. You find yourself fighting, with different people in the family and outside the family. No, we can't spend that. Let's spend less. Let's not even do the project. So, in a place like the United States where there is some discipline remaining in the private sector about how money is spent, and certainly when people go out and buy stuff, it's not like, the Clintons may do it this way. Let's go into the supermarket and that apple over there, yeah, let's spend $10,000 on that fruit, for the hell of it, to lessen inequality. I mean, maybe the Clintons do that, but most people when they shop say, I think an apple should cost whatever an apple costs.
Can you picture Hillary pushing a shopping cart in a pantsuit made out of oven mitts?
I think you can. But so one of the things I have liked to do over time is to find relationships like this that are so discordant, so opposite. You look at this ratio. Why is China spending 118 cents for every dollar consumed, whereas in America we're spending 29 cents for every dollar consumed on investing? It suggests that either China has overinvested $25.9 trillion, inflating this bubble, right, that they built in China, or we have underspent 98.9 trillion in the United States of America. I don't think we've underspent. I think China has overspent. It may not be 25.9 trillion, but let me tell you, a $10 trillion bubble is a big problem. And I think that is what threatens all Americans. The fact that the Chinese are not in a position to admit how much against the wall they are. The yuan, their currency, is plummeting. They're running apparently now trade deficits with Europe, and some would argue with North America.
What about this petro yuan?
Well, again, if you've gone ahead and you've been on your merry way, putting up ghost cities and ghost factories and ports that nobody needs, and you started doing this, however many years ago that is, 10 years ago in these numbers, whatever you built in 2007 is probably not all that competitive in 2018. You've got a big problem. Just because you spent $34.3 trillion doesn't mean that it's worth $34.3 trillion today. And on top of which, if you did this using debt and funky off-balance sheet things, and you can't pay it back, you're in a position where China's been selling itself as move over America. We're the future. You guys you've had your time. We're going to run the world. There are more of us than there are of you. Well, our market, our consumption market, is 3 times roughly the size of theirs. They are not the future yet. They're many decades away from being the future, if that. And China could well be in a place, and the reason I'm dwelling on this, when we think about what Donald Trump's going to be saying to Vladimir Putin, and one thing he's not going to be calling him is Pooty Poot, the way Bush did.
Did he call him that?
Well, after he referred to him as Pooty Poot, not to his face, I don't think.
That's stupid.
But he's probably going to be saying, I hope, and I've been giving interviews actually in Sputnik and elsewhere in Russia, saying, if you're sitting there as Russia and you're trying to figure out on who, what horse do you want to hitch your economic wagon to, I mean, you can say what you want about the United States of America, but we're only 325 million people. China's 1.3 billion people. We share no borders other than the one that Sarah Palin has with Russia. We share no borders. And I like Sarah Palin, actually. But
oh, really?
Yeah, I do.
Charles, I think the show might be over.
No, I like her humanity, actually.
She's so stupid.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
We can agree to disagree on that.
But anyway, if you're sitting there as Russia and you're asking yourself, if I'm going to do a 10, 20-year deal with anybody, should I really want to do it with China, which has this massive economic problem?
Yeah.
That is,
could come home to roost in 10 years.
And Russia's relying on China to fork over capital. If China doesn't have any capital, and China has all these 1.3 billion people, many of whom are going to be hungry and angry, and are going to be wanting territory, and may want to be enlisted in an army, and a nice project would be to take over a third of Russia, and just put the Chinese people in that portion of Russia. I think the last thing you want to do is get into bed, as Russia with China, and probably something you want to do, even if you want to have good, decent relationship with China as Russia, is to have a counterweight in an alliance with the United States. So this is a critical meeting setting up tomorrow. We don't need to guess how it's actually going to come together, but I wanted our viewership to see these facts. We're going to be dwelling on this with Gordon Chang, I hope, in a broadcast and amplifying these concerns.
Sarah Palin will not be joining President Trump in her meeting with Vladimir Putin, will she?
I don't think so.
She doesn't really have too much of a. She had a reality show, and that was about it, right?
So if we go to the next page, if we can.
Indeed.
All right. We've had various and sundry. We don't have to pull up these links because I want to keep us on time. There's two separate views here about whether or not the information that the FBI has and the legislators want concerning the Russiagate informant, whether that's already been released. The first story here says yes. The second story says that actually no, the Democrats are fighting it tooth and nail, and I think for good reason, because what we're going to find out is that Rosenstein and the Department of Justice and the FBI has been restricting access to these documents because they don't want Congress and the public to know about what's really going on in 2015-16 especially before the 2018 election. We know in this piece here, we don't need to pull it up, we know that 2 Republican congressmen have already drawn up impeachment papers for Rosenstein. And I think this man needs to be impeached. Whether he can be convicted is not clear, because I don't know if you need a 2/3 vote for Rosenstein or just for the president. You may need it for him, in which case it's unlikely he would be convicted.
Can't Trump just fire him?
I think it'd be even better to impeach him as well.
Because then it's all of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he's hiding something, and whatever he's hiding.
He's hostile.
And he's hostile, and he's aggressive, he's arrogant. And in red here, if we look at this one Time magazine, Time, it used to be a decent magazine 30 years ago. Now, the next one, that one. Time is now a joke.
Well, Time magazine is the same magazine that published the Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh no, that was Life magazine. But then it's Time Life, right? It's the same thing, isn't it?
But here's our Department of Homeland Security Secretary saying Russia isn't targeting the midterms. That's not the real question here. That's deflection from the real issue. The real issue is, to what extent was the Obama administration in league with corporate media, academics, think tanks, the Clinton Foundation, and others, to what extent was the Obama administration colluding, conspiring to rig multiple elections inside the United States and then other elections outside the United States in gross violation of many laws? That's the real question, not this question. I don't think that Pooty Poot, as Bush would say, I think he's a smart individual.
He might be watching on VK.com.
He could well be.
Mr. Putin.
If so, thanks for watching. But
he should become a sponsor.
No.
Why not?
I don't think you'd want that.
Huh?
But That's the real question. To what extent the Obama administration may have been conspiring to rig elections, that's something I want to know. I want to know the answer to that question. And I suspect the answer is intimately.
A lot. Yeah.
So if we go back into that body of the slide quickly, we don't need to pull up the zero hedge thing. Donald Trump has suggested that he may ask Russia to extradite these people. He's certainly not going to do that. I mean, Putin's not going to let these Russians out.
Why would he ask? Trump's not going to ask that. Those guys had nothing to do with it. This is idiotic stuff. You know, all right, I don't want to derail you because you're on a roll.
Yeah.
But.
So Trump is trying to build this as a low expectation summit. I think he's going to do well. I think we're going to get some benefits out of this. I think Russia's going to gain some benefits out of this. But we'll talk all about it next week when we know what actually happened. But this is hysterical. Overnight, this congressman, this idiot, Kevin DeLeon, has been endorsed by the Democratic Party of California over a sitting senator, Dianne Feinstein.
Well, she's pretty bad, isn't she?
Well, but she's a longtime sitting senator, and this guy's way to the left of her. And so I've come up with the slogan for Democrats, not just in California, into oblivion with Dillion. Right? I mean, there's no way. I mean, even if the guy wins the election in California, he's only going to push Democrats further off a cliff here. I mean, where does socialism work so well? The kind they advocate. I mean, in San Francisco, you got to watch your back, and you certainly got to watch your feet wherever you walk. Here in New York,
why do you say that?
Dirt, filth. You know, there's stories now. The crime in San Francisco, yeah, and the homeless, etc. In New York City, in front of your near your apartment building here today, three different beggars.
Well, you know, not long ago they opened a homeless shelter right around here, and that introduced a lot of...
But it's aggressive. I mean, this guy came up to me like, yo, man, buy me a piece of pizza. And the guy was like 50 pounds overweight. I don't think you need a piece of pizza at 2:30 or whatever time it was.
Buy him a Jenny Craig membership.
So this is a development, you know, these smart-ass Democrats who think they're so wise. I mean, you know, if they were broken the night of November, whatever it was in 2016 when the glass ceiling wasn't shattered,
yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to be swimming in what I call red tide, you know, in this election. And this is an interesting piece here. This is Scott Adams, the guy who does Dilbert and doesn't vote.
I do like Dilbert.
He's saying, look, Scott Adams says Trump critics may scare him to vote. The theory being, you know, the approach of these people who are critical of Trump and conservatives is that, you know, if you don't, hey, I think it's not this time.
Yeah, it's not.
Well,
except, there we go.
Yeah, they always talk, certain of the progressives, they talk about how Republicans are intolerant. In reality, it's, you know, these Clintonistas, Obaministas, they're the ones who are intolerant. And, you know, you disagree with them and they think it's okay for you to be harassed in a restaurant, harassed in your house, et cetera, et cetera. But for Scott Adams, who does not vote, to say that, you know, what's going on is so obnoxious to him that he may actually turn out and vote in favor of Trump.
Oh, is that what he said?
In essence. Is a sign to me that Trump could well be winning, forget the Democrats, and I think he's winning some Reagan Democrats over. I think what he's really winning is the largest slug of the voting population, which are independents.
But if they're scaring him, why that
Trump
title...
is not scaring him. It's that
critics.
Critics of Trump. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if we go back into the slides, we've got, as usual, let's see. We don't need to just put up this link about Manchin, but, you know, Manchin has told Chuck Schumer to kiss his ass because Schumer was trying to get Manchin to not vote for Brett Kavanaugh. But we got, and we won't say the guy's name, but we got this. I don't know if you saw this yet, but this is pretty funny. To close the meat of the show out, and we've got a few more slides to go over. This is something that went up on Facebook, and I don't like doing anything to help Mark Zuckerberg, but this is pretty damn funny. If it's still up there.
What kind of sick human cheats on his wife, tries to abuse his power to rig an election, with his mistress, and then is this damn smug about it.
You see a picture of Stroke and then a picture of Clinton, and they almost look. Clinton looks like an older version of Stroke, doesn't he? His face is almost
regards,
similar,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's pretty funny. I'm
this,
amazed.
Of course, the famous image that was used on the secret policeman's other ball.
Yeah, that's pretty damn funny. So, all right, if we go back in then to the slides quickly. All right, and we go to the next page. All right, what may be on the near-term horizon for Mr. and Mrs. Bill? Okay,
Yeah.
people keep saying to me, "All right, what's going to happen, Charles? You know, what's going to happen?" What's going to happen is, I think the Clinton Foundation charities, and there are a large number of them, are going to have their authority to operate retroactively revoked. Okay?
What will that mean?
That is a multi-billion-dollar financial problem for a lot of people. It's jail time for a lot of people. Guidance on this, you know, there's a lot of mostly red on this page, but people are fond of saying, well, the Clinton Foundation has a determination letter. And then you say, oh, okay, that's pretty good. That's great. Well, a determination letter is according, this is from the IRS, here's the link, written in 1988, and here's an update in May of 2018, is a written statement that applies the law to the facts and representations in an organization's Form 23, Form 1023. Form 1023 is the application for tax exemption.
Yeah.
Simply put, the determination letter, all it says is, Jason Goodman, based on what you told me, the IRS, in your application here, assuming these facts that are in representations that are in the applications are true, then if that is true and continues to be true, you are validly authorized to be a charity. That's all it says. So it's not like it's a blanket endorsement, you do whatever you want. The facts and representations have to be true. Okay? And I will tell you that in no Clinton Foundation application are any of the material facts true, and in most cases, many material facts are omitted. So all of these determination letters, in my mind, based on the evidence that I've reviewed, are false and should be retroactively revoked, and I believe they will be. So recently and ominously for the Clinton Foundation, there was a new ruling, and here's a link to it, but note what it says here. If there is a material change inconsistent with exemption in the character, purposes, or method of operation from those on which the determination letter or ruling was based, or if there was any, not one, if there was any omission or misstatement of material information which includes incorrect representations or attestations as to the organization's organizational documents, etc., 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 the determination letter or ruling ceases to be applicable. This was issued in May of 2018.
Whoa.
Under Donald Trump's
Whoa.
IRS department. So this is a sign to me that the IRS has been studied. The average investigation into a charity fraud supposedly takes 2 years. We know that the FBI opened an investigation in January of 2016, and we know the IRS opened an investigation in July of 2016. That's 2 years. So you've had 2 years, IRS, to do this. You're sharpening your knives out here. The facts are there. We served it up. This is our 88th video or 87th video or whatever it is. There's a lot of information out there. You have a lot of people in the IRS and the Department of Justice. You need to get your acts together. We need to be playing indictment bingo, conviction bingo, financial penalty, cash register ringing. We need to be doing this. We got a deficit to balance. We got a debt to pay down. And what better way to do it than to go after this kludge of Clinton Foundation and related charities, false front charities, and the donors that have been sending money towards these false front charities to get on the right side of the Clintons. So I say by the 15th of November 2018, at the latest, we're finally going to be vindicated here.
Wow. We should have a party.
We should have a big one, yeah. So this is just 3 bonus slides quickly to give you, we won't dwell on it, but here's the source data to show you the unequal distribution of consumption for each of these G7 and then for mainland China, India, and others. You see the total amounts. If you go to the next page, the unequal distribution of population. Remember, the population is basically on 30% of the Earth's surface. So these G7 countries haven't been growing that much by way of population, and the bulk of the population is actually outside. It's in mainland China, India, and the other nations of the world. By the way, these other nations, the picture I've been painting here is not as bad as the truth, because in other are a lot of rich countries, the oil-producing nations, the smaller European states. If you really did this properly and extended it, went past the G7 to the richer countries, let's say the 20, 30, 40 rich countries and the 160 other ones. The people down here in other are still, under globalism, in deep shit, living in shitholes.
Exactly.
So if we go to the next, this gives you a sense also, remember I said that consumption is roughly equal to income, right? So when people in the G7 countries, back in 1988, 2/3 of the world's consumption was in 7 countries, G7. Now 50%, 49% in 2016 is in just 7 countries. There are 200 countries.
It's better, at least.
It depends how you look at it. If you're Japan, you went from 14% share of consumption to 6%. That's not better. When workers, below the level of the cronies and the academics and the consultants and the hedge fund guys, the people who are trying to put meat on the, food on the table for their families, are a lot worse off under globalism, because it's unregulated globalism.
Right.
And it's and that, I think, is why we haven't seen it yet in Japan, but why you're going to start to see the Trump phenomenon. We've seen the Salvini phenomenon in Italy.
I thought Trump and Shinzo Abe are buddies.
But again, I'm not so sure how much of a populist Shinzo Abe is quite yet. A businessman coming into these different countries and saying, look, hang on, this globalism bullshit, unregulated globalism, I don't know what you people are trying to do at your conferences at Davos and all this kind of stuff, putting up ghost cities in China and India. We're going to stop this project, and we're going to instead look after workers inside and voters inside our own countries. If we're going to send aid abroad, we're not going to send it through crooked foundations like the Clinton Foundation, and now maybe the Obama Foundation. We're going to truly help people in these poor countries sensibly. We're not going to set up projects to enrich former presidents or world leaders and call it charity.
Right.
So with that, I think we're a little bit over time, but we're done.
Well, the time is yours, Charles, to use as you choose. Now, I just wanted to bring to your attention, there was an article that, sorry, I didn't have that ready. Well, so, Charles, while we're getting that prepared, I wanted to remind everyone that I've recently been exploring a new format with Quinn Michaels. We've been doing some Patreon-only special content for the viewers that have been supporting the work here at Crowdsource the Truth. And of course, you get all the regular live streams, but people are also going to get some exclusive live streams that are available only on Patreon. And we're doing this to say thank you to the viewers that have become sponsors and are sponsoring the work, and also because some of the work, particularly that Quinn and I have done, it's been the target of harassment by people. So by putting it there on Patreon, it keeps it in a little bit of a more private environment. Now, this article that you had sent me here, where did it go? There's so many emails coming in minute to minute. Here we go. Oh yes, of course, we remember that Sarah Huckabee Sanders wasn't able to get tea at that Red Herring or whatever it is.
Red Hen.
Yeah, even better. But the Queen of England was happy to serve her tea. So I wonder what will happen to the Red Hen. Probably just a bunch of Hillary fans will eat there. But Charles, it's been a very action-packed episode of Sunday with Charles. We will be doing a closing in this week. I apologize. Last week,
That's right.
The whole DC thing came up last minute. That Seth Rich press conference came up last minute, and I wanted to cover that. That to me was a very strange thing. I don't necessarily believe the testimony of that witness. No hard evidence was presented. And I've said it many times. Anytime information about Seth Rich comes up, it always seems so questionable that at this point, there's so much questionable information about the whole thing that I just don't believe it at all. And these 12 indictments from Robert Mueller, there was an article in True Pundit claiming that Robert Mueller had plagiarized, of all people, George Webb. Now,
really?
That's what True Pundit was saying. And, Lola on Twitter dropped the mic. She was doubting that. The article's already seems to be gone. Oh, look at that. Twitter has suspended Guccifer 2.0 and DC Leaks. So again, DC Leaks was mentioned in the Robert Mueller indictment, and our new friend, someone who I've interviewed a couple of times, John Mark Dugan, is the guy behind DC Leaks.
Really?
So there's all this stuff going on that's like, how are all these people that we know right in the middle of this? It just makes me wonder if we haven't been dealing with people that are somehow involved with the FBI in ways that maybe I don't know about, but it's very strange, Charles.
It is indeed. It is indeed. That's, odd that the True Pundit thing would be gone.
Well, I don't think it's gone. I think it's just been probably pushed out by other news that's come up. There's obviously so much going on.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, Robert Mueller plagiarizes right-wing journalists. We spoke about this a bit with Quinn. As I said, I don't know how Robert Mueller would have gotten this. I don't know if maybe George and Robert Mueller are writing legal documents by numbers and maybe going to the same source to get their information. I just can't explain it, but there's a lot of strange things that surround all of these incidents. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I want to thank you once again, Charles, for an amazing presentation. I want to thank everyone who's been watching. We've had 1,400 people or something like that with us here on YouTube, as many as 1,400. And I hope everyone will remember that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored news resource, so we really do need people to become sponsors. You can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a monthly sponsor. And for even just $1 a month, people are going to get access to that exclusive content with Quinn Michaels. I've had other people contacting me who are interested in getting involved in that as well. Laura Loomer has expressed some interest. Okay. Kevin Shipp has expressed some interest, and it's not to say that we're going to go behind a paywall. We offer tons of free content to everyone, and of course $1 a month, $12 a year. I think people are spending more than that on coffee, cigarettes, Coca-Cola, Big Macs. $1 per month. The idea is to distribute the cost of sponsorship over thousands of people, so no one is paying that much, and Crowdsource the Truth can remain financially healthy. And I've been making an investment in the production. We have this new $39 close-up lens, Charles, that gives us a very nice image of you and allows me to do some things with the production that make it hopefully a little bit more interesting. I think a lot of people got to see the live stream I did yesterday. I'm very excited about this, actually. I did it with Dr. Corsi as well. We had the mobile Skype broadcast capability, which was part of the special broadcast with Quinn last night. Also did a broadcast with Quinn where I went to the gigantic Freemason temple, inside the Freemason temple there in Philadelphia. So that's pretty interesting, and as you can see, it allows me to have a guest on while I travel really anywhere in the world that I would have an internet connection. And this was difficult to figure out how to make this system work, and it did involve a couple of new bits and pieces. So I'm definitely investing the money into new capabilities, because this isn't just a fancy, fun way to spend the afternoon in Philadelphia. This actually allowed me to go with Quinn, who is obviously a very accomplished researcher in the area of all kinds of different things, and allowed him to see everything that I'm seeing right there inside the Masonic Temple. And Quinn was giving me advice as far as what to look at next, and we did another piece where we were going around New York City yesterday. So I'm excited about this new capability. I think Dr. Corsi liked it quite a bit, and we'll see if there's different places that I can travel to around the world, around the country, and utilize that and come up with some interesting stuff possibly. So definitely want to thank all the Patreon sponsors that are helping to make that possible, and all the people who are sponsoring on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. People are sending checks, and really appreciate that. Even small amounts helps quite a bit, and I want to thank you for your time, your effort, the undying, resilience and persistence in getting this information out. I hope we're close to a resolution. It's taking a lot longer than any of us would like.
Well, it's a big ask. I mean, I took on General Electric, where I started in February 2007. It took 11 years.
Wow.
To get GE to the place where it's kicked out of the Dow, and to me, I think it's flirting with bankruptcy. So, these big causes, these big projects, big complex frauds, they do take a while.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Well, Charles, I'll see you on Wednesday for Closing In. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks everyone for watching. We're going to have an amazing guest next week, but maybe we'll keep a lid on that for right now. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you tomorrow.